Think about like the most high-tech, incredibly expensive commercial kitchen you can possibly imagine. We're talking um, immersion circulators, blast chillers, gleaming walls of smart ovens.
Right, gadgets that look like they belong on the dashboard of a spaceship or something.
Exactly. But here's the thing. If you hand me the keys to that kitchen today, I guarantee you I'm still going to burn the toast.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Having all the technical precision, the absolute best tools in the world, it doesn't automatically mean you can cook a great meal. You still need a chef who's creative, someone who understands subtle flavor profiles, and crucially, who actually understands the people they are cooking for.
That is honestly a phenomenal way to look at it, primarily because in the tech world and specifically in the data science space, there is just this overwhelming obsession with the kitchen gadgets.
Oh, big time.
Right. The industry fixates on the algorithms, the processing power, the sheer volume of code. But raw technical precision, when it's stripped of creative, human-centric problem solving, well, it usually just leads to highly optimized, perfectly engineered bad decisions.
Perfectly engineered bad decisions. I love that. And that actually brings us to the mission for our deep dive today. We are exploring how the most impactful professionals in the tech industry manage to blend that heavy-duty technical rigor with a highly creative, practical approach.
Yeah, to completely transform how organizations operate.
Exactly. And we are grounding this in a really fascinating journey from Israel Odeajo. He is an AI engineer at Join Momentum over in the United Kingdom, coming from a background in software engineering.
And his transition into the data space is just, well, it's a masterclass in shifting from just collecting raw ingredients to creatively cooking with data.
Yeah, so welcome. Whether you are prepping for a strategy meeting or, trying to catch up on where the data industry is actually heading, or you're just insanely curious about how the best minds solve complex problems, you are in the right place.
To really understand that transition, though, we have to look at how a mindset like Israel's is cultivated. Because nobody just wakes up with this perfect balance of technical skill and business acumen.
Right, you have to learn your way around the kitchen first.
Exactly. And for Israel, a massive catalyst was a data science full scholarship boot camp he attended in Lagos. That environment was less about just learning syntax and more about real exposure.
Exposure to what specifically?
It plugged him directly into world-class mentorship and global forward-thinking data communities.
Okay, I have to ask, though, because we are talking about an industry where people literally build million-dollar applications in their bedrooms.
Oh yeah, using YouTube tutorials and Stack Overflow.
Right, open-source GitHub repositories. In a modern landscape bursting with endless free self-guided resources, is having a traditional mentor actually moving the needle? Or is it just like a nice networking perk?
I mean, it is so much more than a networking perk. What we often miss when we talk about self-taught coding is that tutorials and documentation only teach you the mechanics of the technology.
Just the mechanics?
Yeah. Mentorship is the bridge between that isolated technical learning and actual messy real-world application. Like, a YouTube video will show you exactly how to structure a machine learning model to predict customer churn.
Sure.
A mentor, however, will sit you down and explain why the marketing department is going to completely reject that model unless you present the findings in a very specific, non-threatening way.
Wow. Okay, so they teach you the unwritten rules of the ecosystem.
Exactly. Mentors help you navigate the cross-functional collaboration, the project management, the politics of data, really. They transform you from a solitary individual typing away in a vacuum into a collaborative professional.
Someone who actually understands the business context.
Right. And for Israel, that mentorship gave him the confidence to tackle the really heavy computational stuff, machine learning, massive data sets, while also introducing him to critical communities.
Right, he highlights a few specific ones in the source material.
Yeah, groups like Masakane, which does groundbreaking natural language processing for African languages, and DataHack4Fi. When you engage with communities like that, you start seeing the broader practical application of your code.
So it's like you memorize the recipe on your own, but the mentor teaches you how to run the chaotic restaurant.
That's a perfect analogy.
And mastering that chaos becomes absolutely vital when you realize the skills actually required to succeed in this space are rarely the ones you find in a computer science textbook.
That is a critical realization. I mean, when you look at what Israel considers the most undervalued skills in the data field, They are incredibly telling.
Yeah.
They have almost nothing to do with writing perfect code.
I noticed that immediately. You look at his list and you expect to see things like, I don't know, advanced SQL optimization or better Python scripting.
Right, the typical technical jargon.
But instead, his overlooked skills are entirely human-centric. He lists domain knowledge. He lists communication and storytelling. He lists collaboration.
And perhaps most importantly, the ability to clearly frame a problem from the outset.
Yes. Let's break down why those matter so much more than the syntax.
Well, technical skills at their core just ensure accuracy. They make sure the math functions correctly. But problem framing ensures you are focused on the right problem to begin with.
That makes sense.
Right. You can build a flawless, highly accurate, predictive model that tracks warehouse inventory down to the microsecond. But if the actual operational problem is that the delivery trucks are too small, your perfect mathematical model is absolutely useless to the business.
Right, you optimize the wrong variable entirely.
Precisely. And that is where domain knowledge comes in. Domain knowledge is the context that allows you to look at a massive spike in a data chart and know, that is a genuine shift in market behavior.
Rather than just assuming it's a glitch in the data pipeline.
Exactly. And then storytelling is the mechanism that takes that complex market shift and distills it so the CEO actually funds your recommendations. The technical foundation is just the prerequisite to get in the door.
It's table stakes.
Yeah, these human-centric skills are the actual differentiators that make you valuable.
But developing those human-centric skills, like learning to frame problems and translate complex math into executive summaries, that isn't something you learn overnight.
No, not all.
In fact, trying to bridge that massive gap between raw data and business value, it takes a toll. Yeah. Israel noted that the sheer weight of trying to master all of this led to some major moments of feeling completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, he even talked about being tempted to just give up on it altogether.
Which is wild to hear from someone so successful.
It is a common, though rarely discussed, reality of the field. I mean, data science is overwhelmingly vast. If you stare at the mountain of algorithms, business contexts, and statistical models you don't yet understand, it is cognitively paralyzing.
And the burnout rate has to be huge.
It is, because people try to learn everything at once.
So how did he push through that paralysis? Because he didn't just grind harder or try to memorize more code.
No, he focused entirely on small, actionable goals. He adopted this very grounding mindset that progress, no matter how slow, is still progress.
That's powerful, breaking a massive, ambiguous field down into immediate, manageable tasks.
It's a highly effective strategy for resilience. When you stop trying to boil the ocean and just focus on the immediate, actionable problem right in front of you, your entire approach to the technology actually shifts.
You stop looking for the most complex solution.
Exactly. You stop looking for the most impressive solution, and you start looking for the most practical one.
Which perfectly sets up how these human skills and technical foundations actually combine in the real world. When you embrace that mindset of solving the immediate problem, you start balancing rigorous methods with true creativity.
Yes.
There is a specific project of Israel's that illustrates this beautifully. He was tasked with developing an automated repayment reminder system for customers.
Now, given his background in AI and software engineering, his first instinct easily could have been to build an incredibly complex custom application from scratch.
Right, it's a classic trap in tech. You get handed a business problem, and the immediate temptation is to, stand up a dedicated server, write a custom backend in Python, build out a front-end interface.
Engineer a massive architecture just to prove you can use the shiniest new technology.
But he didn't do any of that. Through independent research, he realized the underlying data was already organized, and he could literally just leverage Google Apps script to build a reminder system.
Yeah.
Wait, a basic Google script to handle financial repayment reminders? That feels like fixing a high-end sports car with a roll of duct tape.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly simple, I know, but that is the brilliance of it. For those who might not be familiar, Google Apps Script is essentially a lightweight way to connect Google services together using basic JavaScript.
Okay.
You don't need to configure a server or build a complex backend infrastructure. You are just writing a few lines of code to say, hey, when this spreadsheet updates, trigger an email over here.
And the result was a highly practical innovation that successfully reduced non-performing loans and significantly improved customer communication.
It worked perfectly.
It didn't have to be the most complex tool in the world. It just had to be the most effective one for that specific practical application.
That is the essence of creative pragmatism. True creative problem solving isn't about building a massive system. The goal was simply to get people to repay their loans.
Right.
By utilizing a lightweight, highly accessible tool, he solved the business problem quickly and efficiently. He refused to let the technology get in the way of the actual solution.
Creative pragmatism. I love that term. But that level of creativity isn't just about your choice of tools,
Yeah.
like opting for a simple script over a heavy application.
No, it's broader than that.
It is also about creatively questioning the data itself to uncover realities that everyone else is completely blind to.
Yes, and this is where we see the real power of blending technical rigor with a questioning human mindset. Israel applied this perfectly during a customer segmentation analysis he worked on for an e-commerce platform.
Oh, this is fascinating. The setup for this is something every single business can relate to. Initially, the entire team expected customer behavior to neatly align with standard demographic factors.
The traditional categories we are all used to: age, location, how often someone buys.
Right, the fundamental assumption is always that 20-somethings living in a major city are going to buy one specific way, and 50-somethings living in the suburbs are going to buy a completely different way.
That is the traditional decades-old marketing playbook. You put people into buckets based on their easily identifiable traits. But Israel and his team refused to just accept that baseline assumption.
So what did they do?
Instead of a human analyst drawing an arbitrary line and saying, let's group everyone over 40 together, they applied advanced clustering algorithms to the data.
Okay, for the non-technical listeners, how does that actually work in practice?
Imagine a massive three-dimensional graph floating in space. Every single point on that graph represents a user's behavior. Every click, every time they hovered over a product, every purchase they made.
Yeah, I'm picturing it.
A clustering algorithm measures the mathematical distance between billions of those tiny behaviors, and it groups together the users who behave identically.
Wait, so it completely ignores their age or their gender?
It completely ignores their age, gender, or zip code, unless that factor is actually mathematically relevant to the purchase. It removes human assumption from the equation entirely.
And what they discovered by letting the math find the patterns completely flipped the script. Customer behavior was not driven by demographics at all.
Not at all.
It was entirely driven by product categories and internal shopping patterns. They found that some users consistently bought high-value, premium items regardless of whether they were 25 or 65.
Or whether they lived in central London or a rural village. Meanwhile, other groups just preferred frequent, lower-cost purchases, again, completely independent of their demographic profile.
The business implications of a discovery like that are staggering. It illustrates the profound danger of assumption in business strategy.
Yeah, we use demographics because historically they were the only things easy to measure. We lazily assume someone's age dictates their choices.
But what this algorithm revealed is that raw, behavior-based data yields a much truer reflection of human intent.
Exactly. What a customer actually does is a far better predictor of what they will do next than the year they happen to be born.
It shifted the company's entire marketing strategy overnight. They moved completely away from a demographic approach and embraced a behavior-based segmentation model.
And the results were huge.
Yeah, it led to highly personalized campaigns, a massive boost in customer engagement, and significantly higher conversion rates. It's a difference between assuming you like a certain type of music just because of your age versus knowing exactly what you like because I can literally see your listening history.
It is undeniably more accurate. It is a massive win. But here's the critical next step that separates good technical professionals from great leaders.
Okay, what's that?
Uncovering a brilliant insight like that about customer behavior is fantastic, but it is completely useless in a vacuum. If the rest of the organization doesn't understand the insight or can't access the data to use it themselves, the company hasn't actually evolved.
Which brings us to the challenge of scale.
Yeah.
How does Israel take this sophisticated, data-driven mindset and scale it across an entire cross-functional team?
He tackles data literacy through a very intentional, multi-pronged approach. First, he leads by example. He actively incorporates data into his own daily decisions, so it becomes the visible standard for his team.
Setting the tone.
Exactly. Second, he prioritizes structured education, organizing actual training sessions to build the team's baseline capacity to understand these concepts.
But the most structural, lasting change he makes is simplifying the access to the data itself, right?
Yes. He builds out dashboards and implements self-service analytics platforms.
So the overarching goal is to allow non-technical teams like marketing, sales, or operations to pull down numbers, analyze trends, and use data effectively on their own.
Without having to constantly submit a ticket and wait for the data team to answer every little question.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If you give non-technical teams direct access to complex data through self-service tools, aren't you inviting disaster? Like, if you just hand raw data dashboards to a marketing team without deep statistical training, it's like handing a complex medical chart to someone who isn't a doctor.
That's a fair point.
They might see a slight normal fluctuation in a metric and misdiagnose it as a terminal disease for the entire company.
That is a very real risk, and it speaks to the tension between control and empowerment in tech. If you just dump raw data on an untrained team, yes, you will get chaos and misdiagnosis.
So how does he prevent that?
That is exactly why Israel couples the self-service tools with those educational training sessions we just mentioned. True data literacy isn't about the technical team hoarding all the knowledge and acting as gatekeepers. It is about empowering the entire organization to speak a shared language.
So the dashboards and the training essentially act as the translation layer.
Exactly. Well-designed dashboards act as guardrails. They provide a curated, safe environment for people to explore the data that is specifically relevant to their roles without letting them break the underlying system.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And the strategic benefit for Israel's team is massive. By providing these self-service tools, the data engineers free themselves from answering 100 basic, mundane daily queries.
Like, what were yesterday's regional sales figures?
Right. This allows the technical team to focus their energy and processing power on the complex, creative problem solving that actually moves the needle.
They automate the mundane, so they have the bandwidth to focus on the magical. Like that behavioral clustering analysis, that is a brilliant operational playbook for literally any technical team.
It really is.
Now, for the listener who's hearing all of this, feeling completely inspired and thinking, okay, I want to start blending this technical precision with practical creativity in my own career, Israel offers some very concrete, actionable advice for newcomers.
Yes, he does. He is a fierce advocate for practical, hands-on learning over pure theory. He specifically recommends a book by Abhishek Thakur called Approaching Almost Any Machine Learning Problem.
Which is an incredibly pragmatic title.
It matches the philosophy perfectly. The reason he recommends this specific book is that most machine learning textbooks drown you in the heavy calculus and theoretical mathematics behind the algorithms before you ever write a line of code.
Yeah, that's what causes that paralysis we talked about earlier.
Right. Thakur's book essentially flips that model. It says, here is a broken real-world scenario. Here is the code. Let's fix it right now. It forces you to get your hands dirty and understand the mechanisms of the problem rather than just the math behind it.
It perfectly mirrors his advice on taking project-oriented specialization courses. He pushes newcomers to prioritize gaining real-world experience over just passively collecting online certificates.
Exactly. Don't just read the recipe.
Get in the kitchen, turn on the stove, and actually try to cook something, even if you burn it the first few times.
And tying it all back to the very beginning of his journey, he reiterates the absolute necessity of community.
Right, coming full circle.
Leaning into platforms like DataHack4Fi isn't just about networking. It is about finding those mentors and staying grounded in a field that evolves almost daily.
You have to stay connected.
Learn the practical applications, build the projects, and surround yourself with a community that forces you to think about the human context of your work.
To quickly recap the core of Israel Odeajo's journey, he proves that being a truly great data professional, or frankly, a great professional in any technical field, means valuing the soft skills just as highly as the hard code.
It really does.
It is about mastering the art of storytelling and the precision of problem framing. It means prioritizing creative pragmatism, like utilizing a simple, lightweight Google script over deploying complex tech simply for the sake of using complex tech.
Absolutely.
It is about trusting math to reveal actual human behavior rather than falling back on lazy assumptions. And ultimately, it is about democratizing those insights so the entire organization can evolve.
The overarching lesson here, whether you are deep in the trenches of tech, running a marketing department, or working in operations, is the absolute necessity of looking beyond the raw numbers.
The numbers are just the start.
Right. The data points are just the starting ingredients. The real value is generated by asking the creative, deeply human questions that give those numbers context and meaning.
And that brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. It builds off that incredible e-commerce project we discussed, where the clustering algorithm proved that behavior matters infinitely more than demographic labels.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. So if our digital footprints, the culmination of our literal daily behaviors, our deeply ingrained shopping patterns, the specific things we click on when no one is watching, if those define us and predict our future actions more accurately than our age, our gender, or the city we live in.
What happens when organizations begin to know our true habits better than we know them ourselves?
Exactly. It represents a fundamental shift in how human identity is processed by the digital world. How much of your own identity, like the comfortable labels you assign to yourself, is just a demographic illusion in the face of your actual mathematically measurable behavior.
It's a slightly terrifying but mostly fascinating concept.
You might tell yourself you are the elite chef in the high-tech kitchen, but the raw data knows exactly how many times you've burned the toast. Something to think about until our next deep dive.